this Friday. Massive deal here in New York City. The greatest arena in the history of mankind, the world's most famous arena. Trademark that. The Mecca, the home of the Knicks, Rangers, and boxing. Some of the most famous fights in boxing history have taken place at Madison Square Garden. March 8th, 1971, Ali Frazier won the fight of the century. On Friday, we'll be able to put July 11th, 2025 in that same conversation. Dare I say, all-female card, spanning 5 fights. I do believe it's around 21 titles on the line. It's an insane number. And of course, multiple undisputed title fights, multiple unified title fights, the biggest rivalry, the first real trilogy in pro women's boxing, and it's on the biggest platform there is, Netflix, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano 3. It's a great pleasure to have the co-founder of Most Valuable Promotions right here and now to talk about it all. There he is, my friend and yours, the great Nakisa Bidarian. Hello, sir. How are you?
How are you?
Good to see you.
Great
Please
to
have
be
a
back.
seat. Yes. It's a tight one. I said, I'm getting an hour with Nakisa. And they said, in 30 minutes, don't waste his time.
They didn't say we only.
Last time it was an hour, and I'm getting 30 minutes because you're a busy guy.
We're filming the Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano face-to-face today, so I got
We
to
are.
go there.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
It's good to have you here. What a crazy couple of weeks for you.
it's been a great couple of weeks. Obviously, a lot of disruption in many different ways, but we're super excited. We're here for the biggest women's boxing event in history, live on Netflix globally. Jake is now a ranked fighter, so we're feeling good.
Yes. By the way, when you say disruption, what do you mean by that?
Disruption, good and bad, right? The good is what we've achieved in such a short amount of time, and the bad is the haters who continue to try to break us down, to take down Jake's accomplishments and what he's done, and that's disruption as well.
So in the immediate aftermath of the Jake fight, I saw both you and him very vocal on social media. By the way, welcome to X, the Nakisa Bidarian account, very active. And you guys this time were saying like, okay, we used to laugh off the haters, now we're coming after you.
Yeah.
We're going to sue you if you accuse us of nefarious dealings, right?
I think, look, stating like, hey, I think this or I think that, but when you definitively state that Jake is putting on staged or rigged fights, then that's just defamation, and you're causing substantial damage to his business, to MVP's business, and something that's 100% not true, right? It's a federal crime to stage a fight. And so that's why we're going to get a lot more aggressive in going after these individuals who make these statements. And in the world of social media, these false statements get carried in a way that people start to believe the narrative, right? And that was the genesis of the issues with Dana White, because he was the one that was saying Jake's fights are rigged, Jake's using steroids, and that's how that all came to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in a place where people just can't believe what Jake is doing, is how I look at it. So they have to say it's staged.
Rick, you good? Rick wants to do something here. He's busy. Oh, he's fixing the microphone. There it is. He's working hard. All right. Have you started any of that?
We are in the process, yes.
I mean,
Absolutely.
like elephant in the room, Piers Morgan, you're going after, like, are you going to come after these people?
100%.
Wow. Okay. They've crossed the line.
100%. Enough is enough. The time has passed that Jake has shown what he's able to do in the ring, and people still want to criticize. That's okay. But don't make false accusations. Don't make statements that definitively damage his brand, his business, MVP's profile, MVP's brand.
How can you put a number on this? Like, how damaging is that?
Not to be discussed here, but the damage is we're in business with DAZN. We're in business with Netflix. We're in business with Celsius. Shout out to Celsius.
Yes, right here.
That's the damage that you're causing, because you're having us have to have conversations with our partners that are just unjustifiable.
So can you definitively say you are going to be suing Piers Morgan for what he has said about Jake's fights? Because there was a contentious interview there between them at the beginning of
I
that
can
fight week.
definitively say that our legal representation is looking at multiple individuals
Okay.
to go after.
What did you think of the fight itself, the performance? And we're kind of going in chronological order here, so we'll get Jake out of the way. What did you think of the performance on June 28th?
So going into it, what I looked at it as was Jake's biggest challenge. And the reason I say that is Jake has fought very accomplished, experienced MMA fighters that are much tougher opponents than the majority of the boxers that athletes face in boxing earlier in their career, right? And then he faced Tommy Fury fairly early in his career as a boxer. For Jake, Tommy's been boxing since he was a kid. You can argue whether he's great or not, but his his pedigree is boxing. And Jake lost in a split decision, fairly close fight. The next two pure boxers he fought were Andre August and Ryan Borland. Much more accomplished boxers than Jake from a traditional perspective, right? One guy was 10-1, the other guy was 18-2, Golden Gloves champion. But the calculus there was those were two guys who'd never been under the bright lights. And even though Jake had an experience deficit, he had a mental advantage. And that's what I believe happened in both of those fights. He took him out in the first round. When it came to Chavez, it's a guy who had the in-ring experience and the big lights experience. So I was nervous about that, assuming Chavez had a great training camp. In regards to the weight, Jake weighed in at 199, Chavez weighed in at 198. California State Athletic Commission, extremely professional, does a second-day weigh-in at the arena. Jake weighed in at 209 and Chavez weighed in at 213. So Jake was the smaller man in the ring that night. And I thought for 5 rounds, Jake totally neutralized Chavez. And people can say, oh, he didn't throw for 5 rounds. No, it's because Jake was much more active, much more sharp for those first 5 rounds. As Jake got a little fatigued, Chavez got a little bit more, opportunistic. But I was proud of the way that Jake fought back in those later rounds. It wasn't like Chavez was throwing and Jake was just covering up and holding him. There was a back and forth exchange. And if you look at the punch stats, extremely close in rounds 8, 9, and 10. So overall, very pleased with his performance.
And so then I have to ask, he gets the win on Saturday, and then on Thursday we get this crazy news that Chavez has been detained by ICE. Did you have any idea that this was in the works, that they were looking at him?
In the works? Absolutely not, right? I got a text early Thursday morning, East Coast, probably around 4 a.m. from a immigration advocate that I know. And he said, just FYI, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has been detained by ICE. And I said, what? And then later in the day, we'd find out more details. I think the confusing part is they identified him as someone to go after June 27th. Why it took until the following Wednesday night, I have no idea. I'm sure they certainly knew where he was going to be on June 28th.
Right. And do you know where he stands right now, where he is?
No idea.
No idea.
No idea.
Like the footage of him being detained in handcuffs is wild, because it was literally 3-4 days prior that he's in a ring.
On a big stage.
Yes.
Globally.
Yes.
Yes.
And so this never came up beforehand to where like
if it came up beforehand, we couldn't go forward with the event.
Right.
Right. The idea of ICE coming to the arena where we're putting on an event that is heavily Mexican influenced, that would never be something that we would consider doing.
Sure. Do you know what his status is as far as like, will he be able to?
No idea.
No idea. Okay. That is a crazy one. Among the list of crazy things that you guys have had to deal with over the last few years. And it's interesting because even when we were talking about, the tweets and potential legal action, I do feel we're getting to this point. You're coming off the Tyson fight. This has been an interesting year so far for you and Jake and for MVP. The Canelo stuff. And then the sort of like open battle with Turkey and whatnot. How would you describe the first 6 or 7 months for you and Jake and the company? Because there was a lot of drama there at the beginning, right?
I think fully disruptive and continuing to be a, leading voice in this sport when we have a small company versus some pretty big boys with big pockets. And I wouldn't say we're in a battle with Turkey. Turkey may find it convenient to constantly take shots at Jake, but that's okay. That's no different than when Dana White was taking shots at Jake, right? That means we're relevant. That means we're actually a topic of conversation. So no problem with that. Chavez Jr. was someone we wanted to fight right after Tyson, July 20th, right? July 20th was going to be Tyson last year and then Chavez. That fight got postponed, so the Chavez plans got postponed. When the Canelo opportunity was presented to us in early December of last year, of course we jumped on it, because that would have been a monumental moment for boxing. Much bigger than Canelo versus Crawford. No matter what hardcore boxing or MMA fans tell you, that fight would have crossed over just like Jake Paul and Mike Tyson did. So Jake was interested in it because he wants to do big, massive things that bring attention to boxing. He did that last November, and we're here for the biggest fight week in women's boxing history. And I was interested in it because I felt like it was a good test for Jake at that point of his career. And even if he lost, it wouldn't matter. He was losing to Canelo. But Jake fully believed he had a really good shot of knocking Canelo out, given the size advantage.
When you're literally on the goal line of making this happen, and then it gets pulled from you in that whole public back and forth, do you not say to yourself, like, man, fuck this. What do I need this shit for? What do I need this stress in my life for. This is too much.
No, I said everything happens for a reason, right?
Really?
100%. Because who knows what would have happened to Jake Paul in that fight if the fight went forward, is the way I looked at it. There was a reason that God decided that this wasn't the moment in time for this fight to happen. Now, once Jake gets a cruiserweight belt one day, maybe that's when it happens and Canelo goes to get a belt in a different weight class. I don't know.
Could you clear something up? Did you ever tell Canelo, hey, if you take this fight, we don't want you fighting Crawford? In other words, why couldn't he have done both?
Did we tell him that?
Yeah.
We were certainly not in a position to tell Canelo anything.
So it wasn't like you were trying to sign him to a 2-fight deal.
No.
You were
We were partnering with Canelo
for that one fight,
for
May
that
4th,
one fight. Absolutely.
and then or May 3rd, and then
he could do. I mean, he'd already signed I think a 3-fight deal at the time. Then it became a 4-fight
Sure.
deal with Riyadh Season.
because there is an argument to be made. You fight Jake, you kick his ass. Now the Crawford fight is bigger in September.
It would have been 10 times bigger.
Right.
10 times.
So why do you
bigger.
think they made such a big deal to say, hey, no, you can't do this. Fight Skull instead.
Because you don't want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a fight and it doesn't meet the viewership of a Jake Paul fight versus Canelo, right? I think him fighting Jake, you could say, devalues in their mind the specialness of what they have with Canelo versus Crawford. And that's a way to look at it. That's totally fine. I believe exactly what you believed. No matter the outcome of that fight, everyone was going to win in Canelo versus Jake Paul.
What you guys are doing now in this sort of battle reminds me a lot of Scott Coker and Strikeforce versus the UFC circa 2011, 2010. And what I mean by that is,
Well, Strikeforce didn't win that battle, so I don't like that analogy.
okay, no. Okay, they did gain a lot of momentum though.
Yeah.
And part of why they gained so much momentum was because of women's MMA. That was the one thing that the UFC wasn't doing at the time. And I'm wondering if this was part of the calculus where you were like, okay, they have the deep pockets and they're going to try to make these mega fights, but for whatever reason, clearly they're not booking
Zero, Ariel.
nothing.
We started MVP August of 2021, and we had 3 priorities, and one of them was women's boxing.
Okay.
We signed Amanda Serrano September of 2021, and she's been a priority since that day and continues to be a priority. The last thing we're thinking about is what someone else is doing on the men's side and how it reflects on the women's side. What I will say is that we have genuinely been interested and passionate about women's boxing, and that hasn't changed, and it's going to continue to be the case.
So you put Katie and Amanda co-main of Jake and Mike, and they steal the show. Let's be real. Now they are the show, right?
Yeah.
Now they are the show. Now and then you have this idea of having a full women's card. When did that start? Was it like backstage at AT&T Stadium? You're with the Netflix exec saying like, when can we do the trilogy? And we want to now do it with this idea. How did it get to this point of July 11th, going from that fight in November to now and the whole card being women?
Look, that night, Netflix executives came into Jake's locker room to congratulate him, and they said, we want to do more, right? But they said, what we really want to do right now is sign up the trilogy of Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano.
Right now, they're
Yeah, like we're ready to sign.
wow.
And it reminded me of the story that Lorenzo Fertitta used to say around the
Kevin
first
K.
Ultimate Fighter coming back, and they did something on the napkin. We didn't do it. Netflix is a little bit larger than what Spike was at the time, and probably has more, thresholds to get through before they can sign off on something like that. But it was clear they saw the value. And I would say within 2 weeks, in speaking with the Netflix executive team, I was clear on the vision of wanting to have an all-women's card, and this really being the mountaintop of Katie and Amanda bringing eyeballs to all of these great fighters that we've now signed to MVP and that are on this card. And Netflix bought in right away. And I would say Katie and Amanda both said the same thing. We love it. Just get us the best. We want the best of women's boxing on this card. And not every top fighter is on this card, but you've never seen a collection of top pound-for-pound fighters in the sport on one card, ever, male or female. So that's what we're doing.
21 titles total, right?
21 world titles on the line.
Across 5 different fights, 8 total.
Those are world titles.
World titles.
Yeah,
Couple
there's
undisputed.
also Chantel's interim title
Right.
as well.
And right now, as far as women, how many of you signed to MVP?
About 32,
And how many men?
I think 9.
So is there going to be a point where MVP is all women?
No, that's not the plan.
Okay.
But there's definitely a specific strategy to provide a platform and opportunity for the best women in boxing to be under one umbrella and to enable the best fights to happen if the fighters want to fight. I always say this. The UFC has John Jones and Tom Aspinall, right? No barriers to entry other than making an offer and the 2 fighters accepting it. That's the ideal situation. It didn't work out in that scenario, and there may be instances at MVP that it doesn't work out. But if we can have all the barriers to the side, it's one organization. There's no sanctioning body hurdle. There's no promoter hurdle. There's no network hurdle. That's the best way to grow women's boxing.
Would you like for it to come to a point where it's an MVP title as opposed to the WBC title on the line?
I think if we have the collection of talent that we believe that we're going to have, it doesn't matter, right? Ultimately, the title is a marketing tool. The title is not the success of the fighter. Conor McGregor comes back today. He will do the biggest numbers in the UFC. He has no title, right? Jake Paul, top 3 fighter globally, no matter how you want to slice it. He has no title. So Amanda Serrano, whether or not she's fighting for a title, she's a massive name. So it's not the focus of, hey, the MVP belt. We certainly have a most valuable belt in our vision, but it doesn't matter to us.
I bring this up because, of course, TKO is talking about having their own belt, right? And so I'm wondering if from the world you came from the UFC world, do you believe, is that a thing that you say that could actually be good for boxing because there'll be less politics, there'll be less division, or do you like the old way?
I think both are viable. I think on the women's side, it's an easier path to having what TKO is trying to accomplish because there isn't as much ingrained equity value in the champions and their belts the same way. There's 2 or 3 of them, right? But it's not as deep. And I think, look, can it be good for boxing? Yes, if you're fighter first. If you're actually doing this for the fighters and not just to make profit, yeah, I think it could be good.
Do you think it would be good if they got rid of the Ali Act?
I don't think the Ali Act has been that relevant, to be honest, right? I think it's something that's been put in place and hasn't been actually like enforced in many occasions. End of the day, if you do the right things by the fighters and are transparent, the Ali Act is not important.
Is there I hate to use the word rematch clause because that would suggest a second, but if Amanda or Katie wins, can any of them trigger another fight, a 4th fight?
There was a rematch clause in the first 2 fights in Katie's favor.
Katie's favor, okay.
Yes. So if Amanda had won, there would have been a rematch.
Yeah.
In this 3rd fight, there's no rematch clause on either side.
Do you think this is truly the last time we see them fight, or Amanda wins, Katie wants to do it again?
I've not had that discussion once, to be honest.
Okay.
And look, we're looking at this as the final installment of Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano.
Do you think it's possibly, and I know, she's worked with Matchroom for a long time, so maybe they would know better, but is it possibly the last time we see Katie fight? What's the sense you're getting?
Have you watched the Countdown show?
I did. It was tremendous. There was one dude in a double-breasted who was phenomenal throughout, I thought. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you were on it. That's right. So I didn't realize that Katie's father
Incredible.
had come back.
That gave me
right?
chills. Yeah.
Look, it's an unbelievable story. It's great to see. That was the first moment I said to myself, either one, they feel like they need to change something, which why would they? They're 2-0 on paper, and she's been extremely successful with her current trainer. Or 2, she may be thinking this is her last fight, and she wants to experience that professional fight with her father. That's my own thinking. I have no inside track, no knowledge. I saw her today. We didn't talk about that. So I don't know, but I think there's a real possibility.
Do you know if he'll be in her corner?
I don't know.
Okay.
My team knows, but I'm not aware.
I think as a pro, he's never been in her corner because they split up 2016 Olympics, so that would be an incredible scene. As far as Amanda's concerned, obviously she has said some things, and Jordan Maldonado, her head trainer, have said some things. Do you subscribe to the things that they say about Katie, in essence, that she fights dirty, that she fights leading with her head? Do you think she is that type of fighter, and are you worried? Because even when you look at her, like there is, it's a little puffy there. It maybe could open. I don't know. Are you worried about these things?
So worried or believe in what they're saying? Those are two
okay. Well,
questions.
first believe and then worried.
I do believe that Katie uses a strategy to lead with her head, right? To suffocate Amanda's power and not be in the mid-range, because that's where Amanda has hurt her. So yes, 100% it's a strategy. Do I believe that it's a dirty strategy trying to purposely cut open Amanda Serrano? I don't believe that, right? But you could say it's a dirty fight as a result of the headbutting technique that she uses to, again, to negate Amanda's power. Am I worried about it opening? I mean, look, you cover MMA. Once that scar tissue builds up, it's pretty easy to open up, right? And Nate Diaz being the perfect example of that. So I think it's a possibility. Do I think Amanda gives a fuck? No. Amanda's going to fight through anything and everything and finally try to get that W on paper.
What were you thinking at the press conference in April when all of a sudden we saw a bit of a different side of Katie. I think what really triggered it, I rewatched it last night. It was when she started talking about the rounds, and she was like, "You don't get to dictate. You're down 2-0." And then we started to see this other side of her come out.
I loved it. I think
Were you
it's
surprised, or did you know that she was going to come with a bit of
No,
fire?
I was very surprised. Absolutely, I was surprised by the tonality of the press conference, and I think, look, it's good to see a little bit of emotion from the two of them because they are very respectful of each other. They are friendly. I believe deep down they can't stand each other.
Really?
Yeah, but they're two respectful
What makes you say
athletes.
that?
Because all they hear is the other person's name.
Right.
Their entire existence is based on this other human being. And so as a successful individual athlete, you don't want it to always be that, hey, this is the yin and the yang, right? No, this is Amanda Serrano. This is Katie Taylor, not Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor.
Right. Do you think there'll be tension this week between them?
I think at some point there'll be a lot of tension, yes.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
Look, when you watch that countdown and the question is asked who won the first fight,
Great
they
moment.
both say, I did.
Yes.
Or this, the two fights, whatever. It's pretty magical.
Can you take your MVP hat off and say who you thought won the second fight?
You know what I thought, and what I thought was that the the judges were going to give it to Katie Taylor, because I walked in the ring and you said, what do you think? And I said, they're going to give it to Katie. And it wasn't because I thought Katie won, because she didn't win. Amanda landed 107 more punches. Katie had a point taken away. So it was a draw or Amanda won from my perspective. But Katie has an amateur style and does clean 1-2s in and out, and that gets scored well, right? And that's why I thought they were going to give it to Katie.
What about the first fight?
First fight I thought was a draw.
Okay, 5-5?
Yeah, I thought it was a draw. Again, Amanda was the one that had her in trouble, but Katie's style is, scores points.
You were at the first fight. Jake
Yes.
was obviously there, front row.
Yes.
Did you have any of these plans in your mind at the time? Oh, we could, because it took a while. Like 2 and 3 came very close. 1 and 2, it took, 2+ years to get there.
If you remember, 2 was agreed and then Amanda got injured,
Yes.
right? So that was going to be a little bit closer.
Yeah.
That I think would be at this point this fast, because I still think it's fast, right? It's 3 years later.
Yeah.
And now we're headlining Madison Square Garden with all women that Eddie Hearn has said wouldn't work, isn't as good, but we're going to have double the ticket sales revenue of the first event. Did I envision that? No. But did we start to really focus on it over the past year? Yes.
How's your relationship with Eddie these days?
Fine.
There's no legal
There's
stuff that's
there's
done?
no legal situation yet.
Okay, that's finished, right? That's been,
Yes.
what is it, tossed out or agreed to?
Yeah, it's been settled.
Okay, settled is the word. Of course, we do remember the scene in the ring afterwards. What do you think it will be like this week, and in particular on fight night?
Listen, the biggest thing is what do the fighters want, right? And if Katie wants Eddie at the press conference, if she wants him walking her to the ring, if she wants him in the ring, we're totally cool with that.
Okay, and does she?
I haven't asked.
You
That's
you don't
not
know
a
if she'll
conversation that I'm having.
have him in his corner or in her corner or anything?
I don't
like that?
know.
Okay. You did tweet something like 2 or so days ago. Sometimes you have to go through your tweets with like a fine-tooth comb. Who's something about like people emulating you,
Yeah.
and it's like a form of flattery, or who are you referring to there?
Just boxing as a whole, right? In terms of the way we produced our press conferences, starting with the Anderson Silva fight. That was the first time where we spent over $300,000 on a press conference, which is what some promotions spend on an event. I was referring to our MVP owners experience. Someone sent me a clip where they were talking about, we're going to create this new amazing seat. I have an idea that we're going to do these unbelievable experiences in the ring. We started the MVP owners experience with Paul Tyson for $1 million, the most unbelievable seat and overall package in sports. We sold it then. We sold it for Paul Chavez, and we've sold it for Taylor Serrano. So it's just a recognition that, look, we're a small company, but we do some pretty cool, innovative things, and others follow it. And so that's a compliment to our team.
When you found out that the ring would have an event the next day in New York, how did you feel about that?
I loved it. I loved it.
Why did you love it?
Taylor Serrano won. Bob Arum, as Jake calls him, the dinosaur, but I don't, he's just older, right, at this point. Booked Shakur Stevenson on the same night. And people said, why are you doing this? The Taylor Serrano are fighting. Exact words. Nobody cares about women's boxing. No one's watching that. Taylor and Serrano kicked their ass in terms of viewership and ticket sales, right? Then I see they're doing a fight on July 12th with Shakur Stevenson and Edgar Berlanga, who we love and is a Puerto Rican fighter as well. And I loved it again because it's like, okay, now here are these two women and there's another event right next to them. And the biggest reason I loved it, to be honest, is it gives more to boxing fans and boxing media to cover in 1 week. So I don't view it as being value destructive. I view it to be actually value enhancing to boxing for this week.
Could I ask, I mean, I see on social media, and the most prevalent site that I see right now is The Ring, and they do seem to take some subtle shots at you guys with their tweets, with the wording. Does that annoy you?
It depends,
I'm
right?
sure you see this as well, right?
There are writers at The Ring which call us and speak to us and ask for credentials, and we're always happy to oblige. We're media loving, right? We want to treat the media well. And then there's like this narrative at The Ring which is very confusing. It's like state-owned media almost. It's not an independent source of information. Like there was one where they were trying to take a shot at ticket prices for Paul Chavez. We did lower ticket prices because it's called dynamic pricing. There was never $10 tickets available, and we broke the record after 60 boxing events at that venue. And some reporter from Canada, probably someone you know, I don't know him.
Why you say that? You're Canadian too, sort of.
Aaron something?
Oh, Bronstetter. Yes.
Yeah.
TSN.
Yeah. I'm sure he's a great journalist, but I know he's a massive, massive Dana White fanboy, UFC fanboy from what I've seen historically of his tweets. Put out something like, context, UFC did this much more in 2007 or something. Number one, great for UFC. They were around already at that point, 13, 14 years. Number two, if you continue to compare us to the biggest fight promotion in the world, that's a major win for us. That means we're doing something well. We're less than 4 years into this business and we're continuing to grow.
If at any point The Ring, Rietz's, and Zuva Boxing says, hey, we like someone in your stable. We like Alicia Baumgartner. We want to do business. We want to do fight. Are you open to working with them? Same way you're essentially, Katie's a matchroom fighter here, right? So would you be open to that?
As long as we were in a position of co-control, right? Everything that we've done, we've always had a seat at the table to be a co-decision maker because we want to make sure that our fighters are positioned well and not treated as puppets. And that's something that we'll never do. But of course, if they came and said, hey, let's partner on an event together, we would look at that, no problem.
So since announcing all of this, Alicia Baumgartner, Ellie Scottney, Chantel Cameron, Savannah Marshall, Shanika Johnson, I'm probably forgetting, you had signed Tam Tebow, fellow Canadian.
Sharetta
Metcalf. Are there others on the radar that you're looking at right now? Obviously, the sort of elephant in the room is Clarissa Shields, who I guess we had the back and forth, which you responded to about the invite. Was she not invited? Is she invited? She's a free agent after her next fight. She would be the obvious. Are you interested?
Listen, the obvious is we want to have the best roster of female fighters in the sport, right? There's obviously hurdles to working with Clarissa given the past public and private conversations that have occurred, but we have nothing but respect for her career, for her accomplishments, and for her independence as like promoting herself, right? The promoter she works with is a great platform, great guy, but it's not Jake Paul as a megaphone. It's not the UFC as a megaphone. It's not Eddie Hearn as a megaphone. So you have to respect what she's done by herself in being able to bring the attention that she has. So that's what I'll say.
Is she going to be there on Friday?
I don't know.
Okay. Baumgartner and Serrano is a fight that's been talked about for a long time. Now that they're under the same umbrella, does it make it easier to make the fight or harder?
I think in terms of Amanda Serrano, obviously she has a big fight ahead of her on Friday night, and then it's really what she wants to do. It's up to her. She's earned that right. This is her 51st or 52nd fight.
Is there any chance she retires with a win?
I don't know.
Because I feel like all that talk has been about Katie, but she has more fights. Obviously, the amateur career is a little bit more extensive, but she can't do this forever.
She has relatively no amateur experience.
Right.
Just like Jake Paul, actually. If you think about it, she had 12 fights. Jake had one amateur fight against a fellow YouTuber. So do I think she retires? I certainly hope not, right? Because I think she's really come into her own over the past 2 years, both as a fighter and as a brand and as a businesswoman. But it's whatever she wants to do, we'll support her. That's why we signed a lifetime deal. And that's why when she retires from inside the ring, she's going to get very active outside the ring and then I'll finally be able to call her on her phone.
Is it true she still doesn't have one?
She does. She now has a total wireless phone.
Jeez Louise.
But it's not something that she actively uses.
So,
right?
like, if you want to interact with her, what do you do?
Most of the time I call Jordan, and Jordan will put her on the phone.
Golly. And the socials and all that?
She's on the socials with her phone, for sure, yeah.
Okay. So can you tell us about the relationship with Netflix? Are you going case by case? They're dipping their toe. They're getting obviously more and more into one-off events, sporting events. What is MVP's relationship with them?
Yeah, what I'll say is the following. When we did Paul Tyson, everyone said, oh my God, is this like, are they going to do more? And I said, do more. They haven't done one. They need to see if it works. If it works, this is what I would say to everybody, 100% they're going to do more because it worked. They did one. It more than worked. It broke down the entire platform at some level, right? It was an unbelievable success that no one could have imagined. I told everyone we're going to break the record for streaming in the US. We tripled it, right? I told everyone we're going to break the record for biggest women's event in the US. We 4x'd it. So it was a success. After that, of course, they wanted more. But the question is, was that an anomaly? Or do they have something here that can actually work on a consistent basis? Not at that level, like 108 million live viewers, Super Bowl, Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. It's not going to be recurring. But can you get 20 million viewers, 30 million viewers? If you can, then there's something there. So they're doing this event with us. They have the event with Canelo in September, right? And I think once they see how those go, then they'll determine if they want to actually invest more heavily, because then they'll say, okay, it wasn't an anomaly. It actually is something. We need to dig deeper into boxing.
What will be a win? What's the number that you're happy with on Friday?
Listen, I would be happy if the athletes go in there and put on a show.
No, I'm talking about the viewership. Do you have a number? You don't have to tell us the number, but is there a thing you're like, I want to break this number?
Yeah, we definitely have a number that we think would be successful, right? I think about Paul Tyson and the number that we had. Again, we smashed. The success of this event will be based on our ability to remind the 70 plus million people that watched the first one that these two athletes are fighting again.
Yes.
Within boxing, massive event, right? But boxing is a fairly small ecosystem with a passionate fan base. The reason Jake Paul is successful, the reason that fight, the second one was successful, is because you're getting into the broader sports world and then to mainstream. And so the question is, can we do a good enough job of getting the broader sports ecosystem and the mainstream to focus on us this coming Friday night? And I'm pretty hopeful we can.
That's the greatest point of all. I was at a friend's birthday party last week. Know nothing about fighting, only watch Paul Tyson, honestly, because I was working it and they wanted to support. They don't watch pay-per-view. I was at their party, the wife's birthday party last week, and I was like, you remember those two girls that you wouldn't stop talking about? They're fighting again on Friday.
There you go.
She's like, holy shit, I need to watch. She obviously didn't know because she doesn't follow the sport. So you have to get those people, right? The soccer moms, everyone that tuned in to watch. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the billboards. I'm seeing all that stuff. Is part of the motivation. Do you want to do better than Canelo Crawford?
No. Do
you think that's attainable?
I don't, because if you look at the fan bases of the two fighters, of the headliners, right? Amanda is Puerto Rican, American, but Puerto Rican, right? Born in Puerto Rico, New Yorker. Fairly small population relative to Mexico. And if you look at Ireland, massive like fan base for Katie, but again, a fairly small, true Irish population. I think Canelo in Mexico is going to be massive. Do I think Canelo Crawford is going to come close to Paul Tyson? No, but that's not because it's not a great fight for boxing. It's just Paul Tyson was a 6-generational cross-cultural, mainstream, massive moment in time. So we're not looking at Canelo Crawford as a comp. We're looking at our event as being successful.
Just a couple more, and then I'll let you go. I feel like I've been on a treadmill on like level 15 here, peppering you with questions.
We haven't talked about his ranking.
Well, it was literally, you were here. It was literally the rank. I have a list in my mind. The ranking number 14 WBA. That was literally the next question. Is he going to remain ranked? Because people were upset about this. What's happening? And now
who's upset?
I don't know. People, Joe X495.
You have no idea how many people tell us how people are trying to keep Jake out of boxing. How people are calling different people and say, if you work with MVP, you can't work with us. And to me,
Who's saying this?
Whoever it may be. We know who it is. This is a very small world. And we're going to continue to be gentlemen and keep confidential in terms of what we hear in the marketplace. But it's laughable, right? That you're that bothered by this young man and his success and his impact on the sport, that you're going to that length. I have no idea if the WBA is going to review it.
As of right now, he's 14.
He's number 14,
Yeah.
right? And I have a list here. I've been looking at it.
Okay.
The WBO number 11 fighter. And again, this is nothing against these fighters. This is just what this ranking systems are. And this is the reality of the sport. The number 11 cruiserweight in the WBO is 28 fights in. His 27th fight was against a guy, so his second last fight, was against a guy who was 5-18 in a 6-round fight. And that 5-18 guy was coming off of 8 consecutive losses. Is that a tougher opponent, or Nate Diaz in a 10-round fight? Or Anderson Silva or Tyron Woodley, who are certified killers who are coming in and looking to put an end to Jake Paul? The guy fought a guy who was coming off of 18 consecutive losses, and he's ranked number 11. How is Jake different than that in terms of the competition? WBA is number 13. The WBA. So Jake is 14, the number 13 guy. 12 fights in. His last fight was against a guy who was 5-8 and was 2-4 going into that fight. Is that a tougher competitor than Chavez Jr., who has the whole world watching and wants to dethrone Jake Paul? And then my favorite one is the WBC number 14. He's 50-10, which is pretty accomplished, 44 years old. And his last fight was against a guy who was 8-2. And you'd look at that and say, that's okay, that's pretty good. Except the guy who was 8-2, his 8 victories were against opponents whose total combined wins were 7 wins. Do you follow?
Yes.
So literal tomato cans that were put there to lose. And these guys are ranked.
And everyone's upset.
Jake Paul has never fought an opponent that was there to lose. Every opponent, based on his development as a boxer, has been challenging for him. When he fought Ben Askren, Dana White said, I'll put $1 million that Ben Askren is going to beat Jake Paul, because everyone knew Jake was fairly new to the sport and he wasn't, quote unquote, a fighter yet. We saw what happened with Ben. By the way, obviously our thoughts are with Ben.
Respect.
I also want to, actually on that point, also give our condolences to the Brady family for Jeff Brady. One of our team members, Melissa Henricks, was very close to him, and very sad to see what happened there. What a hero in terms of him giving his own life to save two young children. So I want to say that before we leave here. But going back to the rankings, that was Ben Askren. Then he fought Tyron Woodley. Do you think Tyron Woodley was coming in to end his legacy for a couple of $1 million payday? No, he was coming in there to actually beat Jake Paul and continue to make massive amounts of money in boxing. And Jake dealt with that. Every step of the way, the competition has been fairly matched for Jake from our perspective, right? Tommy Fury, as we talked about earlier, a very experienced guy who had been boxing since he was 5-6 years old. For Jake, a massive challenge, who was in the sport for 3 years. And it was a split decision, and Jake knocked him down. So I think it's totally unfair that people look at Jake and say he shouldn't be ranked when you look at the composition of the opponents of some of the other folks that are ranked. Do I understand some of the negative sentiment because people can't grasp why this young man has so much of a draw, so much of an interest from the general public? Yeah, I guess so. But that's what's important, is that you want to be someone that draws attention, right? Lomachenko, a decorated amateur, obviously. I think he had a title fight in his second fight. Why? Because he had a decorated amateur career, I guess, right? But it wasn't like he'd earned his stripes. It wasn't like he was ranked out the gate after one fight. So I think it's a bit of pick and choose in terms of how people want to take shots. You can take shots of lots of things in boxing. Jake is a good target because he gets lots of attention. And, we're hopeful that the WBA continues to recognize him as a ranked fighter. But ultimately, if they decide to change it, that just speaks to what boxing is. Because somebody called you and said they were upset about Jake being ranked. It's ridiculous.
Is he going to fight again this year?
Absolutely.
That's the plan? What time frame?
November, December.
Who's the front runner?
I'm seeing him tonight for dinner, and we'll have that conversation.
The front runner or Jake?
Jake Paul.
Oh. Is Tank a real possibility?
The only possibility right now, man, is that Jake wants to fight for a belt as soon as possible. That's the real.
But that happened this year.
I think I got to talk to him. I think it's tough this year because Badu Jack, who he wants to fight more so than anyone, has a mandatory rematch with the guy he just beat per the WBC. So I don't know if this year is possible. We'll see.
But he will fight this year.
100%. Yeah. Look, that's the plan.
That's the plan. First things first, though. July 11th, this Friday, Netflix, the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. There's the poster. It's a tremendous poster, by the way. Greatness Demands a Trilogy. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, prelims on the MVP and Netflix YouTube channels.
Yeah, so if you look at Paul Tyson, we had over 10 million viewers on the prelims, and so which is a massive number for anything to have that kind of viewership. So we're excited about the prelims here, and given the UK time frame, right, and having Chantel Cameron on there on the prelims, that will be great. And then 8 p.m. Eastern goes into the
Which
main
fight
card.
steals the show? Not the main event. If you had to pick a sleeper fight.
I think Savannah and Shadeja is going to be electric. I think those two are going to come in there and bang it out. I think Ellie Scottney is going to put on a performance of a lifetime. She's facing a very tough opponent, right? Not an easy fight, but Ellie's a supreme boxer. I think Sharetta and Sugar Neeks Johnson is going to be very exciting, right? Big opportunity for both of them. And look, you have 2 unified championships and you have 3 undisputed championships in one night. It's going to be just a magical moment for the sport.
Incredible. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. There he is, co-founder of Most Valuable Promotions, the one and only Nakisa Bidarian. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.